Hi, I'm Alan Border. Tonight, Crash catches up with a former Australian skipper who was a key figure in Australian cricket for 4 decades. He first toured in 1957 as a batting all-rounder, bowling wily leg spinners. He's also known as one of the greatest ever slips fieldsmen. He made a comeback to skipper Australia at age 41. He is Robert Baddeley Simpson, and he is a true cricket legend.
Welcome, Simo. Good to see you.
And you too, Crash.
It's been a long time and your story has so many threads to it. I want to start on something different, though, your catching and your reflexes. Ray Robinson, the great author, once said that your reflexes were so quick that as a boy you could actually pluck flies from the air.
Still can today.
Really?
Still can.
It's an amazing skill. But that must say something about your reflexes, mustn't it?
I suppose it does, and also the coordination. I think that's a big thing, getting your hands in the right position.
You were known there were times when you actually dived behind another slips fieldsman to take a catch, didn't you?
Yeah, I remember diving behind Neil Harvey in South Africa one time, and he just looked down and he says, "What the hell are you doing there, Simo?"
Simo, you're known for a lot of achievements in cricket, coaching, playing, but perhaps the biggest is coming out of retirement at age 41 to captain Australia during the Packer era. When Packer had taken all those players away, you came out of it. You hadn't played a test for 9 years. What made you do it?
I felt there was a need for an experienced player. What you must remember, I was still playing club cricket, and I think that was a great help in thinking back on it. But I just felt that, they had their right to decide what they wanted to do, and I had my right to try and do what I thought was the right thing for Australian cricket in general. So that was the reason.
And you had lunch with Sir Donald Bradman. Did he raise it? Did you know what was coming? What did he actually say to you?
This was after I'd been selected, and he said to me, "Bob, you've got to understand that I had to make a comeback when I was 40 after the war. The time was needed and I was needed." And he said, "I think the situation's the same now, that you are needed to lead Australia again."
Simo, it must have been extraordinary. Like in your first test back, there was 6 debutants. I'm sort of picturing a team meeting. What do you say?
Well, most of them I hardly recognise myself either.
Really?
But nothing changes. They're cricketers and they act as cricketers, and they will continue to act as cricketers for as long as the game's played. So I knew that they treasured their spot in the Australian side. They were lucky to get there, but they treasured it and they did a very, very good job.
You did have one man there by your side who ultimately became your vice-captain, Jeff Thompson. I can't think of 2 more different people, Simo and Tomo. How did you get along?
Very well. Even when I played against him, he didn't pull any punches, but he was a great sportsman, Jeff. He's a wonderful person. He loved playing for Australia, and a lot of people misjudged Tomo, and they had him as this wild young man type of thing. He wasn't. He was a fellow who did Australia proud, gave everything he could to a team which wasn't very good.
How did it feel being back? Like, did you think, "Oh, I'm not the batsman I was. Oh, I can't play this shot anymore"? What were your thought processes?
Oh, cut it out, Crash. I've been playing club cricket all those years, so I knew exactly.
So you felt you were as good as you were at 32?
No, I didn't think I was as good, but I felt I could get runs, but I'd probably get them slower.
What about Kerry Packer's stance in all this? It was said that when you did well for the traditional team, he actually sent you telegrams. Is that correct?
It is correct, yes. I got on very, very well with Kerry, and he always, if I got runs, he always sent me a telegram.
What about the relationship between yourself personally and the World Series guys? You knew so many of them very well, but it was bitter times, Bob, wasn't it?
It was, but I certainly held no grudge against them. I don't think they did to me. I had a job to do, they had a job to do, and the best way I could perform was to forget about that and get on and score some runs.
You've always had confidence in your own ability, hadn't you? Were you nervous about coming back? Did you say to your Meg, "I wonder whether I've still got it," even though you're scoring runs in grade cricket? Yeah. Were you worried?
Not against India, because I reckon I could handle the spin. But certainly going to the West Indies, I thought long and hard before finally saying yes. I thought I had an obligation to a young team. I thought it was important that we should have an experienced captain. But it was a tough decision to make. But if I was going to go halfway, I should go the full way.
Bob, what about your relationship with Bradman? It's often said that you and him got along well. You're one of the few people who may actually know what was he really like. Like, what was his personality like? You played golf with him as well, didn't you?
Played a lot of golf with him. He's pretty tough at golf too, and in those days I was hitting the golf ball pretty well. But we would have a round of golf and just talk about the cricket, and if there was a team coming up and I was captaining, we'd go through all the players who we thought had a chance. But he loved his golf, I loved the golf, and we just became great mates.
And of course, as a youngster, you were so good at golf, there was talk you might even turn professional. Were you close?
Very, very close. If I hadn't have got into the New South Wales team when I was 16, I might well have gone the other way.
And speaking of that extraordinary debut at age 16, I couldn't imagine what it was like, a 16-year-old boy walking in and say, "Hi, Keith Miller. Hi, Richie Benaud, Neil Harvey, Arthur Morris." Was it heaven?
That came the following year, and it was hell. They were all wonderful to me, but Arthur Morris in particular. If he was out early, he'd always come over and we'd have a chat in the corner. And Miller himself was always, Miller. And I think there was probably more togetherness in the players in those days who were still playing for nothing and enjoying every moment of it.
Why is it that sort of mentoring doesn't seem to be as strong as it was in your day?
Well, money. They don't want to lose their position in the side. That would cost a lot of money. They obviously occasionally don't want to help someone who may be doing very well and threatening their position. And I think that's just straight thing, money.
When you came into the New South Wales room, you were so young. Was it true that Arthur Morris asked you, "Where's your nappies?"
Yes, that's exactly true. But he enjoyed his own joke. And from then on, I think he tried to mentor me, because if he got out and I was, sort of ready to come in or come in after a few wickets, he'd take me into the corner and we'd watch the cricket and have a good chat about things, why he got out, why I got out. And he was fantastic, he really was. He's the nature's gentleman, but a good, hard cricketer.
At times you could be a tough man, but there was one guy who always brought out a very mellow side in your personality, and that was Ray Lindwall. When he turned up at training, you almost... it was like your hero turning up. It was just open love almost, wasn't it?
We were very close. Our wives were very close too, and I think that helped. But I loved him. I just thought he's the most magnificent man, and of course, a great bowler. And for me to be at first slip to Ray Lindwall was, I think, the highlight of my career.
Really? That much of a thrill?
Oh, yes.
What about the cavalier Keith Miller, the fighter pilot, who we all thought was just impossibly debonair and gung-ho, but you once said to me, "Oh, look, behind the scenes, don't worry. He stressed out over innings. He wasn't immune to worry." Is that true?
Oh, yes. There was periods when he was sitting in the dressing room going to bat. You can see then he was very, very worried about the situation. And Keith was a man who had all this going for him, but was still sometimes, I think, doubted his own talents.
Really? Even the great Keith Miller?
Yeah. Well, like, if you're going out to face the fastest bowlers in the world, and Keith wasn't a great player of fast bowling, you're going to have some nerves, no matter who you are.
Simo, you've always had a very low tolerance of bowlers with illegal action, chuckers. And Charlie Griffith from the West Indies, when you toured there, you seemed really angry. Did it seem as if his action was blatantly illegal?
Oh, to my mind, there was no doubt about that, and I think most of the players who played against him would feel the same way. Interesting enough, though, we became very close after we finished playing the game. And I think that was brought about because I organised the World Double Wicket competition. And I had Hall and Griffiths playing in that match, and we got a chance really to sit down and know each other.
Some people felt that Charlie was so hostile, the batsman actually feared him more than the great Wes Hall. Was that true?
No doubt about that. He was more dangerous. Don't forget also, we're playing for a front foot rule, but in the West Indies, the umpires sort of didn't know where the front foot was. So he was getting at least 2 feet closer to you when he delivered the ball.
And it was said that what made you particularly angry was your days off in the West Indies. You'd go for a drive around the villages and you'd occasionally see a street cricket scene where bowlers are bowling with illegal actions and you could sense what was brewing. Is that true?
That's true. He was their hero. and they were going to emulate their heroes. I didn't blame the kids, but I certainly blamed the coaches that should have been on the ball and say, hey, this is going to come to an end somewhere along the line, and when it does, I want you to have the proper action.
You never actually said this publicly, but I always sense that you felt there were times when chucking in world cricket was a bit out of control.
Yeah, I think it was. You know, it's a tough call for the umpires because you can end a career, but at the same time, you've got to think of the batsman. And certainly a man who threw had an advantage over the others because he could maintain the speed for a longer time.
Bob, some people felt that the chucking issue consumed you too much, that you stressed too much about it and it distracted you. Did you agree with that?
No, I haven't heard that, but no, certainly. Look, I was very worried about the chucking situation. I could see so many youngsters here in Australia, everywhere in the world, and I just thought, now, if this comes, something's not done, then we're going to be with this problem for a long, long while. And fortunately, because a few of us took some action, the umpires also stepped in and did their job.
Do you feel it's been rectified now? Do you feel that the latest law solves all the problems?
I think it's more than that. I think the fact that the umpires have seen over the years what a harm the game was done by the chuckers, and they themselves have taken a tougher line on people who have got a strange action.
Now, you had to wait 30 tests for your first test century, but it was an epic 311. Tell us about why the wait was so long and that innings in particular.
I'd love to be able to tell you why, but I can't. I got out. I still averaged around about the 50 mark, which was okay, but it was annoyed hell out of me, the fact that I wasn't getting centuries and big centuries, because in first-class cricket I was. And in the end, I didn't change anything, didn't start to put new methods in, but fortunately I got a big 100 in the 64 tour of England, and after that I was okay.
Bob, you captained Australia in 39 tests, and during your first captaincy career, you were friends with Bob Menzies, the Prime Minister, who found time in his schedule to help you write speeches, which a captain has to make a lot of. That's extraordinary, isn't it? Like the fact that the Prime Minister sitting down with the captain, say this, say this.
He was just a lovely man, he really was, and he loved his cricket. I can remember in Melbourne, my wife and I were walking on a particular street, and this car screeched a halt beside us, and out came Sir Robert just to say hello to Meg and I, and I thought, you are a wonderful man.
What did he tell you about speech making? Was there anything he told you that became a formula for you, or some little skill?
Be truthful. Always think of the repercussions that if something you're saying, if it's not right. And above all, though, he says, get out and enjoy it.
Now, Bob, in the mid-1980s, you became Australia's first full-time cricket coach at a period where they hadn't won a series in 4 years. They'd recently gone 14 tests without a win. Why did you do it?
I was asked for a start, but I just felt that there was a need for it. I felt there's a need for someone experienced to be at the helm, but also who knew a little bit about the game, knew a little bit about coaching. And we introduced new methods at practice, and the team just enjoyed everything we're doing. So the big factor was let this mob enjoy what they're doing, and they themselves will get better.
Before you actually signed on, they sent you as a scout to New Zealand and saying, have a look at them, Bob. Tell us what you think. And you came back in your report, which you published in your book, you said you were horrified by what you saw. What did you actually see? What made you think, oh, I don't like this at all?
There was a group of players in that team who didn't respect the position they were in. And I didn't like that. I thought everyone that played for Australia should A, respect it, and B, enjoy it.
And who were those players?
I'm not prepared to say that.
One thing I could say is that subsequently you're a part of a selection panel that quite clearly made the decision to move on without Greg Matthews, Greg Ritchie and Wayne Phillips, names that always come up in that little group. Was it done on talent or attitude?
Very much talent, very much talent. Attitude comes into some extent because talent and attitude are very similar. But they just weren't performing at the time.
Did you have a problem with their attitudes, or?
I didn't admire their lack of love for the game sometimes.
One thing you always had, a great sense of pride in him. Ian Healy said when he scored his first Test century, you came up to him and you said, "Ian, I could not be more proud if you were my son." And he said he felt misty-eyed, and he said it was a beautiful moment from a hard man. So you had that softness somewhere in you, didn't you?
I think I got a lot of softness. When I'm strong, then I will be strong. But I think and like to feel that I helped all the players, and I didn't have favourites, which a lot of coaches and captains do. And everyone was one of my boys.
You had an interesting relationship with Alan Border, didn't you? Because you were brought in almost to take pressure off him. And it always looked as if you worked well with him without being terribly close. What was the relationship like?
It was very good, actually. We played a lot of golf together. Alan's a very different person. He could be difficult occasionally. But in the end, I think he respected the relationship we had. Alan was very shy, and if there was any nasty things that had to be said to the team, I would end up having to do it. Alan just didn't like that. But I think Alan was... I could forgive Alan for anything because he had a great love for the game. He had a great love for being captain of Australia, and he gave all when he was captain.
You saw him through several down periods, including in New Zealand, where he was really close to throwing it in. He said, "I've just about had enough." Were there ever times when you felt that he had enough and you thought, this guy is nearly breaking?
I was worried about him on occasions. I always knew, though, he'd come out of those moods and perform, if not better, as good as he was. And Alan was a unique person in as much as he was so devoted to the game. He didn't have a lot of outside interests, and he gave everything he could to the game.
After Alan Border retired, it seemed that your role changed. You'd gone from being really front and centre with AB to Mark Taylor wanting to run the show and almost to put on the afterburners and find an extra gear in the team. Could you feel that? Is that a correct interpretation?
He was very, very lucky to have a great team. And when you've got a great team and that all the work we'd done before built it into the great team. And Tubby was exceptionally fortunate to be captain at that time. And he was a good captain. And but I thought back on it, sometimes people have all the luck, and he did have a fair amount of luck there.
You're also a selector as well as a coach. Was that awkward at times?
I worried about it when they first suggested I be a selector, but when I thought a little bit more about it, and we were in difficult times in those days, I thought, well, surely I'm sensible enough to do the right thing and say the right thing, but occasionally also to let them know that they're not doing their job.
Bob, you were a great house detective. The players always said if something happened, if someone had a big night out, don't ask me how, but Simo always found out. How did you find out?
Oh, most of the time they gave it away themselves.
On the bus or?
Oh, on the bus or somewhere along the line. And, you know, when you've travelled with Test cricket for the amount of time that I have, every generation was basically the same. And you always had the naughty boys, you always had those fellas who are very secure in what they're doing. But I just thought that sometimes, every now and then, you've got to let the team know that you're not pleased. And I didn't do a lot of one-to-one criticisms. It was generally a team thing.
Because the boys say that when they were having a meeting about a proposed strike and a pay rise, and everyone said, "Don't tell Simo." They walked down to the bar and Simo said, "How did the meeting go?" So you obviously had sources there somewhere.
Look, if you've been around as much as I had in cricket, you knew when something was going on. That wasn't hard to do. And it was only a matter then of listening a little bit and you found out.
Bob, you were an accomplished Test leg spinner yourself and Shane Warne's first international coach. What did you make of him when you first saw him? Could you see this career was going to happen?
I was coaching Leicester at the time, and the board asked me would I have a look at the Australian under-19s who were coming through to go to West Indies. And Shane was in that group, and I have not been as excited as I was when I saw Shane. He was a genius, he really was. Even at 19, he wasn't as accurate as he became later on, but he spun the ball and he had something special, and that came through.
He inspired thousands of kids to bowl leg spin, and yet we can barely get another one. Why? Why did he stand out? Why was he so good?
Everything he did was by the book. He was very correct in his methods. A lot of spinners come into the game and think they only got to spin the ball and they'll be successful. There's been no more accurate bowler, and I say accurate of all types of bowling, than Shane Warne. And he could then add the accuracy and the spin, and he spun the ball more than anyone ever. And Warney was a freak. He really was a great, great bowler.
Bob, there's only been 2 tied tests in history, and you're the only man to be associated with both of them. You played in the first one and you coached in the second. That incredible test against the West Indies at the Gabba, where you scored a half century in the first innings. What was it like on that last day? When I asked you to close, if you close your eyes now and thought of that last day, what's the image that comes into your mind?
The image that came to mind would be just the quietness in the dressing room.
Really?
No one was talking. Everyone was trying their own favourite method to get luck, and that was quite amusing. But it was, the tension in that Australian dressing room was unbelievable. And I imagine it was the same in the West Indies dressing room, because we are going into a situation which produces, that type of finish. And it was just wonderful. And what I did enjoy, the attitude of our team and their team was just one, and everyone enjoyed it, and we didn't leave the dressing room to whatever hours. They tried to kick us out. In your hometown, they tried to kick us out.
I can't believe it, Simo. Actually, I can. But isn't it interesting the way the teams bonded? Like, it doesn't happen so much today, doesn't it? And I guess cricket in some ways is a sadder place for that, isn't it?
I think it is. There was a good camaraderie between opposition teams. And there's very seldom even that they come into each other's dressing room now. And it used to be always that you would go into their dressing room one night and they would come into yours the next. And that gave us a chance of mixing with the opposition.
And of course, Bob, you were the coach of the Australian team that had that famous tied test in Madras, which was the scene of Dean Jones's epic double century.
No double century has ever will beat that. It was just a magnificent innings. The weather that day was just, 105 degrees, and Dino would come in from the field, and at lunch or whatever it was, and we had the team organised just to look after Dino. Some had to take his shoes off, others had to take his shirt off and get the right gear, and back you go, back you go. And we're looking at probably the worst conditions cricket's ever been played in.
Was there any part of you, even looking back at it or at the time, that feared for his life, that thought that he could have actually been in trouble?
No, it didn't go that far, but we all just were in awe of his capacity to stay there. Yeah. Unbelievable.
What was he like after the innings when he came in? And I think you threw him in an ice bath, but do you have any memory of that?
It's very clear, yes. The boys straight away, as we have been doing, undressed him every time there was a break. We undressed him and put on dry clothes for him. Get back there, out there, and do your job again. And he was quite extraordinary. I'm not sure, though, whether that innings did him much good as far as health's concerned.
What about Dean Jones, the character? He was interesting. There were so many sides to him, wasn't there? The competitor, very secure, a little bit insecure, the guy who changed one-day cricket. What did you make of him generally, his contribution to the game?
Oh, I loved him. I thought he was magnificent. He was a pain in the you-know-what occasionally. But he was a player whose true talents weren't appreciated by too many people. And in the end, he didn't quite last as long as I thought he would. But when Dean was going, there was no better batsman to watch.
Bob, after all that hard work you put in with the Australian team in the mid-1980s, out of nowhere, you won the 1987 World Cup. It must stand as one of your favourite achievements.
Yeah, it was vital we were to do well at that period because we were really struggling. One-day cricket does give you the opportunity to change things a little bit and think differently. And we had a perfect team for the one-day cricket. It may not have been perfect for the longer form of the game, but in the one-day, I think we had a team which would have beaten anyone in any generation.
Bob, you've been associated with the game virtually all your life. What's been your favourite memory? Is there one moment that stands out in your career that you think, that was the high for me?
When I scored my first century, that was the moment when I really did enjoy and got great satisfaction out of it. I was very lucky in my cricketing career that I had Bill Laurie at the other end on so many occasions. We weren't people who went out together often at nights and went to movies and things like that. Once we went onto the cricket field, we clicked. And he knew and I knew almost before it had happened. It's quite amusing though, because during that 300, Bill got the run out, and we'd put on 200 at the time, and he came down the wicket, drove the ball back to the bowler, and I turned and dived back into the crease to look up and find Fando's trying to beat me back in the crease.
Oh, really?
I don't know what went on with Fan then, but.
Who was the real Bill Laurie? Because there was the very dour batsman, but there was the excitable commentator. Like, who was the real man?
I think the second one, the excitable commentator, the man who loved cricket so much. He's a special man, yeah.
I cannot think of a living Australian who's given any more to the game of cricket than you have. It's been an absolute joy to have you on today, and I wish you the best.
Thank you very much, Crash.
This has been a production of Fox Sports.